First things first, let's rehash the criteria that went into the creation of this list.
Yeah, so this list is through week 5, so it's not taking into account week 6 games or Rift Rival games, because it's the 5 weeks of the North American LCS. The moved up and moved down is in comparison to the week 2 list that we made. And then I would just say the final thing is it's a combination of stats as well as the eye test for where these guys rank.
All right, perfect. So getting into the nitty gritty of it all, we've got Jensen here sitting at S tier. Does that mean he's a perfect player?
I made him S plus actually, and this is kind of my special ranking reserved for, I think this is the best player in the NALCS right now through 5 weeks. And when you look at what Jensen has done, both in lane to the team fight phase, and how he's really been the sole reason for a lot of the Cloud9 victories, a team that has been struggling a little bit, but his numbers are absolutely off the charts. He's the one that seems to make the majority of the plays for Cloud9 as well, so I just kind of had to put him at S plus here because he's been performing so well.
Understanding you're not taking into account week 6 games, but we did see just Friday night Cloud9 struggling when Jensen isn't getting off the ground. So much of their success hinges on his performance specifically. Another Dane in the mid lane, Bjergsen, right underneath him in the S tier. What separates him from Jensen?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Bjergsen is also an S-tier player. You have to be super good to be put in S, but I almost feel like, you know how in the League of Legends grading system sometimes if the game just is over too fast, you can't get to an S+?
Right.
Sometimes that happens with Bjergsen because he hasn't had the opportunities that Jensen has had to display how dominant he can be. He's playing games extremely well. They're winning a lot of games, but so many people on that team are succeeding. It's hard for him to differentiate himself from Jensen. So both these guys are incredibly good, and in some cases you can swap them back and forth, but I think Jensen has just had to do more and has done more.
Speaks to the strategic diversity of TSM, the fact that he isn't always on Bjergsen's shoulder to carry to the finish, and therefore sometimes doesn't look like the star. All right, moving on. We've got Pobelter here in the A tier. I mean, this is a guy who's sitting on a team currently tied for 2nd place, could make a run for 1st place this week, and yet he's in the A tier. Why is that? He's
a pretty unheralded mid laner for a lot of cases, but he doesn't make that many mistakes through the first 5 weeks. He's always in the position that he needs to be in, and he's doing just enough to kind of help Immortals to victory. And it's always really difficult to grade these guys who are on winning teams. How much are they actually doing to help this team win? But Pobelter, almost always on winning teams, and I think he's having a bit of a resurgence this split.
All right, so someone who splits the difference here. Froggen in the A tier. We know that Echo Fox has recently been subbing in even DeMonte as well. So for a guy as highly ranked on your mid-tier list and who seems so integral to the team's success, I mean, what's going on with that? One, the substitutions, but also why you have him here.
Yeah, so Froggen is a player that is propped up by stats and potentially brought down a little bit by the eye test. So stats-wise, he would be S or S+. But when you watch a lot of these games, I feel like he's a little bit too constrained to the mid lane and maybe isn't creating enough pressure for the rest of the map. I think that might be why they even tried to put DeMonte in, because they wanted to see what happened without Froggen. And then Huhi would be the opposite of Froggen, because that's a guy who has bad CS differentials, but he's always making plays and is really pivotal to the way COG plays. So it's really hard to rank these guys. That's kind of why they're both at A+.
All right, but that's very curious, the idea that they each have an area of weakness that if they were to cover would make them more well-rounded players and perhaps shoot them up the list. Finally, last player I want to talk about here is Keen on Dignitas. Again, just yesterday finding their first victory on Saturday, or first victory after a 4-match losing streak. Keen being a top performer and helping shut down a few players on that, in that match.
Exactly, but we also have to remember this was through week 5 when Team Dignitas was on a 4-match losing streak. I think Keen is so critical to Team Dignitas' success. Everyone says that team is about someday, but I don't think they win unless Keen is able to go off. And with the struggles, I don't think he was doing that very often. He wasn't making plays, and he was getting pushed around by a lot of mid laners, which kind of makes him drop. When he performs, though, you almost see it immediately turn around with Team Dignitas victories.
Now, we know you at home also have your opinions on what is and is not right when it comes to the tier list, so feel free to go ahead and flame Jatt on Twitter using that hashtag LOL Esports, or using hashtag NALCS and tagging LOL Esports. What do you have to say?
The important thing for these tier lists is they are to create discussion. And everyone's going to have different ways of ranking players, and that's really what sports talk is all about. So I'm happy with this one. I stand behind it, but I want to hear people's opinions.